Welcome to another episode of the Sim Man Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Battisto. My co-host today is Sean O'Rourke, and our guest is Christian Carroll. Christian Carroll recently committed to the University of Wyoming. He's been a guy that's a two-time transfer portal guy, and it's kind of interesting just to kind of pick somebody's brain that's been in the transfer portal, has gone through the process. Christian Carroll, highly touted recruit, ranked number 2 pound for pound by Matt Scouts in the recruiting class of 2023. He spent his redshirt year at the University of Oklahoma State. And then he enters the transfer portal and goes to Iowa State after his coaches had left after U23s. He ends up going to Iowa State, where he wrestles for Kevin Dresser and company. He had a good start to a season before having to end a season short just due to an injury. And now he's in the portal again. He ends up committing now to the University of Wyoming. He's going to be wrestling for Mark Branch, McCade Ford, and doing some awesome things up there in Wyoming. So super excited to have him on the show. He announced his commitment yesterday. And again, just being able to have the opportunity to pick somebody's brain that's kind of been through a bunch of mayhem the last couple of years. So super excited to share this conversation with you guys if you can. Follow us on our social media. You can go on Instagram, you can go on Facebook, you can go on X. We're also posting episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Again, thank you guys for following the show, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. I want to go back a little bit. When you first getting recruited to Oklahoma State, I guess, what was that process like? And, why did you originally decide to go over there?
So I'll tell you why I went to Oklahoma State. Ultimately, prior to that, I was committed to UPenn. I had some falling outs in my personal life. My dad moved down to Dallas area, Fort Worth area. And then I was transferring high schools. I actually lost some credits transferring and stuff. So it actually made me ineligible to go to UPenn. So initially, I was kind of in the spot where it was like a couple weeks from signing, maybe 5 days from signing. And I was like, all right, Dad, I've been on the campus. I've seen everything. I want to be by you. Like, me and my dad, our boys were tight. And, I was like, look, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to start training so I can be by you. I'm going to call Coach Smith and just ask him randomly if I can commit. So I actually text Coach Perry first. I was like, hey, is this offer still on the table? And Coach Perry told me, he's like, he's in the bathtub, and he said he thought he'd double. He thought I was messing with him or something. And then I ended up committing there and stuff, and then it was really good, and I absolutely enjoyed that whole time period at OSU. I think that's why I like Wyoming so much, because it's so similar to Stillwater. I absolutely love OSU, but I have no complaints. Everything there, the people, the quality of life, that Southern hospitality is real. The training was great, and I loved every second of OSU. That class that came in was a really loaded class, my freshman, a lot of top guys. It was just a lot of fun. And I think looking back, there's that coaching situation that switched. Everyone has different opinions. I have my own on it. Obviously, I want to coach Coleman Scott to be the head coach. Obviously, Coach David Taylor has done a phenomenal job. But the one thing that does kind of just icks me a little bit, that just drives me nuts a little bit, is just the recruiting as far as that stuff. Because Wyatt Hendrickson was in a room before a coaching change. Ken Amin was in a room before a coaching change. Hamidi was in a room before a coaching change. These are all guys Coach Perry recruited. So they were there before. And nobody knows that. And you got to be careful and stuff. But, that team was built with prior staff. And now they obviously took guys on another level. Coach Taylor took a guy that didn't place national champ. Wyatt Henderson never won national, made him national champion, one of the best guys to ever do it. So obviously his development's really, really good there. But those guys were there prior. But other than that, is it better? Sorry about that.
No, dude. It's funny how often the audio thing happens. I did a podcast with Eric Thompson, and I didn't hear it, but he was hearing this beep the whole time. And I go back in and I had to cut 30 minutes of it because that beeping sound, you could hear it so loud, it was hurting my ears. So weird audio stuff happens all the time. But we were talking about Oklahoma State, and you just kind of part ways a little bit with David Taylor.
For sure, part ways, and it wasn't a negative parting ways. He kind of understood too, because he's in the same position, ironically, leaving Iowa State. Coach Perry's probably been the best coach I ever had in my life. He's cares way too much, done way too much than a coach probably should have. He put way too much effort in. I mean, that guy's crazy. He doesn't sleep. He all he cares about is the sport and his wrestlers. He really puts his wrestlers first more than anything. So I definitely love Coach Perry. So sad not to have him, but like I said, Iowa State just wasn't a fit for me, and that's fine. What they have going there is good. I think Dresser pushed them really hard. I think they have a good system. They have a really good fan base. So nothing negative at all as far as the sense of great guys on the team there and stuff. So there's a lot of guys that are really really hard workers, great guys that did left too. Twardowski, Chinham, all those guys too. There's a lot of good people on that team. So I'll just say, it wasn't for me. Simple as that. But I just think what's best for me. Obviously, I don't want to go to another school. That's the last case of scenario, right? Like I'm tired of hearing this crap. Which, like I said, self-induced. I understand. I get it. The world, I get it. You can come at me, but I think I had to make this decision. I didn't think it was really a choice for my position. So ultimately, that's why I was like, I got her medical red shirt, and then I was like, okay, I there's no part of me that wants to go back. Which, like I said, it's just all on me, and that's why I made that decision. And I think ultimately, a lot of people don't know this, but I went back to Stillwater when I was when I could start training again, because my dad lives in Dallas, Texas, so I would drive up to Stillwater and start training off-site with some RTC guys in Oklahoma State. So not a lot of good guys that took care of me there, my old teammates and stuff. So during that transition, I spent a lot of time with Coach Coleman Scott, who helped me a lot in training. So all these people like Coach Perry, Coleman Scott, that they owe me nothing, and I'm not even competing for them, so they get nothing out of it. But they're just really, really good whole human beings that take their time out for me, even though I can't do anything for them. So I'm honored to have those guys in my life. And I looked at Coach Coleman Scott, talked to him a lot, and he's like, I said, "What about Wyoming?" He's like, "Oh, Coach Branch," which was his coach when he was at OSU. And he said a lot of his success was because of Coach Branch. I was like, really? I was like, okay. He said mainly all of it. And he said, obviously Coach Smith, and there's a lot of good guys there, but he said a good portion of that was Coach Branch. And it's like his philosophy and style and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, like I'm a big Coleman Scott fan. Like you guys saw a post, I posted one of that coaching things and all that stuff. So like he's my man, coached me at the Olympic trials and stuff. So I kind of trust his word, and he was like, "Hey, you should really, check it out." And I was like, "Well, you think he's a really good coach? He's probably a really good coach, So,
Right.
So I got up there and I took my visit and stuff, and just the people there, all the coaches. I think Coach Branch seems to be like a really happy dude overall. I think one thing I'd like to take away from him when this is all said and done is just the peace and happiness he has in his life. He seems like a very stress-free guy. Like he just seems to enjoy life, no matter what's going on. So, which is really awesome to see as a recruit too. So I think that's really positive. And then looking at the rest of the coaching staff, Coach Ford, he is a firecracker. Like this is firecracker, and I love it. Like he gets me so pumped up and energized, and like I love his personality. It's freaking awesome. He's the man for sure. So I'm looking forward to working with him and just being around him and having that great positive energy. He recruited me really hard. And then Devin Schroeder, he's on staff. So the story about Devin Schroeder is I'm from Indiana. So when I was a little kid, I was in the Purdue room all the time training as a kid, going up to middle school, high school. So I watched Devin all the time. I was probably the biggest Boilermaker fan in the world in like high school and middle school for collegiate wrestling. Like I loved it. I love Coach Urson. I love those guys. And then Devin he was crushing it at, 125. I mean, he was probably the second on the tech vault list, probably behind Spencer Lee at the time. And he was just a beast. So it's kind of crazy looking how, life will put you, because this guy was a guy I watched and kind of idolized growing up to now he's my coach. So it's kind of cool, small world, but for sure. So that's kind of the chain of events. So like I said, obviously it's not, plan isn't to move schools. I can promise you this: I'm not changing schools again. I won 4 national titles in the bag of $1 million. I'm not changing the schools.
Yeah.
I'm done and over with that. So I promise. Sailor's promise. This is my last go around. So
I mean, so like Christian, a guy like you, right? Number one pound for pound guy in the country coming out of high school. U20 world team member, U23 US Open champ. Amazing accolades, right? You've been through this portal process and recruitment process a few times. What advice can you give to those guys that are looking to jump into the portal for their first time and or beginning their own recruitment process out of high school that you think is important and for them to kind of understand and know as they go into this? Because you've done it a few times now and you've finally found a place that you're excited to be at and to call home for the next 4 years. So talk about that and what they should be looking for.
For sure. I think looking at the recruiting process, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in the game. That's all part of the game, a lot of car salesmen. So I think you just need to figure out, one, is this a place this is your family for the next 4 years. You're with these guys 365 days. You're with these guys every single day, grinding, working your butt off. So it's like, this is your family for the next 4 years. So putting yourself in a place where you like, okay, this feels like home. I can acclimate to this. It's super, super important. What's going to bring you happiness? Because I think at the end of the day, no matter where you go, you see guys win from anywhere. AJ Farrar went to Cal, nothing against them, but like they don't get the recruits as most teams, right? Or looked at as much.
We're Cal State, Bakersfield alum, so tread carefully.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Hey, I love Cal Bakersfield. The old Purdue coach Reyes was from there, so I'm all for it. I'm all for that. All right. But no, I think in the sense of recruiting, maybe they don't always get the top recruits or blue chips, right? So I think they can still develop guys, and that's my point in the sense of keeping them on the podium and stuff like that. So obviously, it doesn't matter where you go. I think ultimately, whatever makes you feel best, makes you happy, probably get the best out of yourself. Now, on the other side of things, when you're recruiting, a lot of kids don't know, you got all these crazy contract deals, right? All these NIL and stuff. The thing, in my personal opinion, get the scholarship in school, then get the bag. Reason is, everything you see these guys, they got 150K, this, that, whatever. Well, that's their scholarship that comes out of school, board, all these things, food, housing, whatever it is, it all comes out. Plus, the best part is you get taxed on that. So you got to pay that all back, whatever you get taxed on, So a lot of people will see these numbers just like, hey, make sure you pay attention to what you're looking at because you could really get screwed over and end up paying for school when you're not trying to. So I think really pay attention on the NIL part. Make sure you read everything. Make sure you read that contract, you sign before you commit. You make sure everything that's in that you guys discussed overall, make sure that's on pen and paper before you sign. So ultimately you get the best of what you guys discussed with those coaches on those recruiting trips and on and so on. So
you almost need like an agent or like a manager, somebody that's going to be reading all these dang contracts. Because when I think like some of these kids that are signing these NIL deals that are 18, 19 years old. I mean, I was a smart guy, but read contracts like I don't know. All I see is the dollar sign in front of it.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's really important. I think there is starting to become a wave of managers and stuff like that for people in those positions. And NIL, it's becoming more popular. I do think it's important. Isn't necessarily have. Maybe not, depending on the people. I have a father that's in the business world and does this, read contracts all the time and stuff. So I think I had some really good development from my father and kind of what to see and stuff. And he was there with me, obviously, so that helps. But ultimately, make sure you take your time, slow step it. Unlike me, maybe I rushed some things in my prior career. There's a quote from Benjamin Franklin, haste makes waste. So don't be too hasty. Take your time and read through everything.
That's awesome. For sure. It's like you want to, just don't be so excited by the moment that distracts you from like, hey, what are you ultimately trying to do? And not letting those things kind of pull you aside a little bit. But it seems like, this is going to be your final home, and that's what it is. It is a home. What about Wyoming, I guess, for you kind of felt like this is the home environment, like this is the place that I feel comfortable, not just where I can go and pursue my goals of wrestling, but just all the other side, all the other stuff on the other side of stuff.
I'll start with this first. Nobody knows. I didn't even tell the coaches this. 2 years ago, when I was at OSU, redshirt, and I was freshman, my dad was like, ironically, he's like, dude, what? He's like, where would you go? Just ironically, he's like, say the coaches got fired or something. I was like, well, Dad, I'm not trying to go in there. He's like, I know, but where? I did say Wyoming. And the reason being is culture. It's all about culture for me. As like I think it's so similar, same mascot, same everything, right? But I think ultimately the culture and the lifestyle there. I think the Western culture, that lifestyle. I'm more of that type of style kid. I grew up, Indiana, graduated with class 50. I was in a small town school all my life and where I lived, and I think had a really similar culture, right? I think just like I said, that Western culture, that lifestyle, shooting guns, killing stuff. I think, that's more of how I was raised and stuff. And a lot of those guys are pretty interchangeable from OSU for our team and coaching staff with Wyoming as well. I think, I love the mountains. I hike so much. My family, we're full of hikers. We hike everywhere we go. There's a thing called the Trails apps. You can find any trail anywhere local to you, So we always use that. When I went overseas, Bulgaria or Jordan or wherever we went, we always hike. Like every time we travel, we hike. So it's just a big priority for us. And for me, I think in being in Wyoming, I get to do some of the best things I love, which is the hunting's unbelievable. The hiking's unbelievable. So I think personal life things, I think that checks a box. I think culture-wise, that checks a box. And I think coaching staff-wise, that checks a box. So, I couldn't go back to OSU, but I went to a place that's literally OSU, so it's like the coaching staff, literally, with Coach Branch, and then the lifestyle and stuff. And I think just that small town feel is more fits more my persona more and my personality. So for me, it was the best option, I think, to go to. So, I might look back and be like, why didn't I go here in the first place? So I just absolutely adored Wyoming, and I just fell in love so quickly just because of everything, the lifestyle and the coaches. But a lot of people can say that everywhere. I think I've been to a lot of places where I've been super excited, super pumped, like this place would be awesome to go to, but this one tiny gut feeling like, I don't know, can I be away from my parents here? Can I do this here? Can I, how's it going to be when I'm really here? Wyoming, I never felt so at peace at a university in my life, and so confident. This is a place for me, and that's how I felt when I was at Wyoming.
I have to ask the school question first. Yes. It's like, dude, how because I initially going to Penn, you have to be somewhat of a good student, but when you're trying to like figure out, okay, going to Iowa State, like what credits are going to transfer over, and then you move, and then it's like now you're moving again. How has the academic process been with all this happening?
Yeah, I think sticking to Big 12 helps for sure. A lot of stuff can translate over a little bit easier sometimes and stuff. Not always. Like everything, you're going to lose guaranteed at least a couple credits for sure. Not every single class transfers over. If you have a class about dinosaurs, I'm sure that's not going to transfer. That was a real class at OSU. So, I don't know if some of that stuff is going to transfer over, So you always lose a couple, but the main stuff is pretty much similar, and the curriculums are, especially in the Big 12, pretty much similar. They're not always interchangeable, but I think overall they're pretty similar. So all the main business stuff that I'm in, because I'm a finance major, pretty much all translates over. So thankfully, that makes my life a lot easier. Indiana University has one of the best business schools, Coast School of Business. Like Mark Cuban came from there, very notable business school, top 10 in the country for undergraduate, and I think graduate maybe top 5, top 7. So when I was going to go there, I'd have to restart. It didn't matter where I was at. Any transfer that goes into Kelly, they don't want any of your stuff. You automatically have to restart. So it's like, well, that's kind of tough. That stinks,
You got 4 years, though.
Even though I got 4 years, I'd maybe like to get a year grad school, or something like that. But I think, and it's a tough school, so especially trying to do both. But I think it's a really good opportunity. But I think to translate everything over and just make it a little bit more smoother transition, it was pretty nice to be in Big 12 still and stay and go to Wyoming. So,
what's kind of next for you? Kind of moving from here? Are you preparing for your move to Wyoming to begin training? Are you planning on hitting any freestyle or Greco tournaments between now and the start of next NCAA season? What's kind of your plan moving forward and getting started with Wyoming?
Yeah, so I should ship up there hopefully Monday, this next coming Monday, get all my stuff. I've been kind of a sitting duck, I want to get back, get the ball rolling. I've been training here and there, but it's a little bit sparse in Texas and stuff. But outside that, I have been training. My dad's the same person every single day. He's at the gym at 5 every single day, so I tag along with him every single day. And obviously running and lifting, that stuff's all great, but it's nothing like wrestling shape, So two different by a landslide. So get back training, and then hopefully, you know, if I feel really comfortable and good enough shape to go wrestle 23s, you know, and hopefully make another world team. Which honestly, I think this whole perspective, taking this time off, kind of allowed me to put a different perspective in the sport. Not make it so much, you know, so big. You know, if your hand's in front of you, it's a pretty big hand, you know. But when you pull that hand out from you, you kind of can see all the perspectives. So I think, you know, with that downtime, I was actually an estimator for one of my dad's companies. So literally, I was just sending bids out and stuff. So I literally was just working like a normal working man, and then I met all these general contractors on all these dinners and meetings down this downtime, and I just put the sport in perspective. I think for me, that's what I needed because I was making it everything. And I was making it a little bit tougher on myself when I probably shouldn't have. So, getting the real life perspective, all these things downtime, kind of really completely rearranged my mind. Like I feel pretty confident after my wrestling career in the work world, and stuff like that. So I think there's so much for me. I have to put it this way because it is everything. I have to trick myself and say there's so much more to the world than just the sport of wrestling. Even though I say those things, I still gotta learn to believe them, because you know this is, you know, been my whole life. So. But getting different perspectives and stuff like that, I think will ease the pressure on myself and allow me to compete really in the best version of myself. So
That happens all the time where it's like somebody tells you that and it's like, yeah, you know, like that sounds true, like you know, this isn't my identity, but it's like I'm not in that place where I can believe it yet.
For sure, that's absolutely right.
It takes some time though, and I think
It
just
does.
based on all your experiences, and I mean, you got a little bit of time away from wrestling, got some work experience, like
Yeah, that's right.
that's got to help a lot too.
That's right, for sure. I'm a little bit more cultured now.
Since we mentioned U.S. Open, I think this was at the U.S. Open, but you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. But I think my favorite Christian Carroll moment is the singlet straps down and the flex at the camera.
That was World Trials. Yeah, that
World
was
Trials. That was awesome. That was like one thing that, you know, Brian and I are both coaching pretty high level wrestling teams out here in California. And my kids were dying when I came back to practice after that. They were like, that was the coolest thing ever. They loved it.
So my initial thought, now I did that to one of my buddies, which now I look back, I'm like, God, Christian, you're an idiot. But because Aiden Teo, who I wrestled, we were on world teams previous to that year, and he's like such a good kid, and I'm like, God. And we're boys. I was like, dang it, why did I do that? But the initial thought in my head, because I do think sometimes, you know, with my Fargo photos, I think I have some of the coolest iconic photos in the wrestling game, you know?
Absolutely.
So I always try to build, probably my pops always in my head, but, you know, persona, business, build that character. You know, out of that thing, I got a couple of sponsors. Literally, I have these people call me up and some of these CEOs of companies from that exact post. And what I did is what got me some of these sponsors. So I think you're in a different world, right? It's not, you know, you guys are probably like, what the heck? You can get
I thought it was funny.
I thought it was awesome.
You know, it's like times has changed so much. So I think always be on the move, always trying to build yourself. So in my head, all I was trying to do, honestly, because I did see Gable do it, you know, at the U.S. Open. And the reason why I did that is because I was like, I just won this match, just made the world team. I'm not wrestling another second. Get me off this mat. So I was like panicking. And I was like, Gable, I fucking did it, you know? So, but
you apologize. Like after you did it, the ref was like, hey, like, and you're like, well, I'm sorry, Gable did it. Like,
for sure. I'm like, hey, I'm an idiot. I realized what I did, you know? And then I think I saw him do it. And all I was trying to do is just create a comparison. I knew I was going to heavyweight. I saw him down. I was just like, man, what do I look like with my straps down and taking a photo too? You know, I just saw him do this at the US Open about a month ago. So I did that, and all it was simply for just trying to build my media and stuff like that. Obviously, I don't go into my match thinking what I'm going to do. You know, I'm not having this fantasy of like, man, what am I going to look like on TikTok or Instagram? Or no, you know, after the fact, obviously I'm pretty locked in person and I don't try to, it's good to envision things, but to a certain extent, you know, you don't want to get too carried away. So, but that's all that was just more of trying to build my persona and, you know, ultimately it's a money game now. So it's a little bit different. So.
Well, and I'm a fan of personality in this sport. You know, obviously us coming from Cal State Bakersfield and then just, you know, AJ Ferrari for the year, you know, and he's hitting the splits out there doing the double road runners. Like I love personality in this sport and I think we need more of it. And that you showed a little bit of your personality. You're fun, that you enjoy it, you're excited, you're hyped up. And some people have different opinions. Some are like, get your hand raised and get off the mat. And I think that's a little bit more of that like old school kind of early generation of wrestling mindset, where it's all about staying composed and all this. It's like, no, man, we work so dang hard. You worked so dang hard. You made the world team. It's like, flare that personality a little bit, have some fun. And just like you said, look what all the opportunities that came with that, sponsorships, businesses calling you, wanting to collaborate. And I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. And I hope we continue to see some flexless or
You gotta keep your straps on though. That's the
Yeah,
only thing.
you can't pop the top, right?
yeah, I can't pop the top in the
I
NCAA.
think when you're dealing with that stuff and people's different opinions and stuff, because this wrestling world, there's 1,000 negative comments about me. There's 1,000 negative comments about this guy, this person, everyone in the sport, right? Everyone has opinion about everyone, and I think ultimately, negative or positive, it's positive for the sport. I have, I can see so many comments about this guy and there. I mean, they are just people that never even achieved some of these people's accomplishments, or couldn't even dream of. But
Not even close.
it's like those people are still maybe indirectly are promoting the sport. I don't think you can be mad at it. I think it's great when people put negative or positive comments because one, we're doing one of the toughest sports, in my opinion, one of the greatest sports, right? So I think anything that promotes the sport, negative or positive, is overall, I think, good. People are going to have opinions. That's life. You're going to have to deal with them. You probably get, you guys probably make decisions that probably affect your family, right? Maybe putting food on the table or doing this or that, or you got to take care of your family. A lot more realistic, tougher decisions than some wrestling stuff, right? So a lot harder. So I think all put it in perspective, I think it's all positive. I think it's great. When people put negative or positive, yeah, I think it's all great because yes, it's tough on maybe people. I try to stay away from them, for my own well-being, but I think the ones when I do see, I think you just got to chuckle, and like, hey, like the end of the day, I caught their eye. And I think that's positive. They're talking about me. I'm on their mind. That's great. That's positive because bad publicity is also good publicity. I think anything to promote the sport is great. And I think that builds character in our sport. If we don't have people challenging other people's thoughts, it's probably kind of a boring sport to talk about, But when you got people post some wild comments, like gets people riled up, flared up and stuff, it's like every wrestler comes out of every person behind the screen, They just get all fired, and I love it because that's a lot of us, deep down, and that's why we did the sport, because our type of personality and stuff. So I think negative comments are just as good as positive ones. So I know that may be a hard, visionary outlook on it, but I think overall, my personal opinion, I think it's absolutely great.
Well, it's like, how can you have any meaningful dialogue if you're kind of holding back sometimes? And obviously, when you're posting comments, this is being aware that this might be out there for forever, but at the same time, and it's kind of like, goes back to your celebration. It's like, be who you are, like be genuine. And as long as you're genuine, it's like, that's okay. Like, I don't think anybody can disparage that. That's who you are, which I'm about it, man. Let it out, let that passion out a little bit.
For sure. I think everyone to their own. I got to be careful because I do want to run a business someday and stuff, So, yeah. But I think, the people that just, whatever they can post or whatever they think is best for them, I think it's great overall. I never really respond or look at stuff too much, but good or bad. But I do try to respond when I am tagged, if people want me to respond or something like that, so along those lines. I think it's good to, connect with the community. I think there's a lot of kids, I was in that position and, I'm still in that position. I have so many people I look up to and coaches and stuff. So I think always giving back and taking the time out, people can say they don't have time. There's plenty of time in the day to do a lot of things. So I think it's always good to give back sometimes and, communicate with people. I think that's best. And it's also good for the sport and creates good morale. And I think it's good for yourself too, So I think we've all been in that position as a kid. I think whatever it might be, every kid grew up, want to be a Hawkeye, want to be a Cowboy, want to be this, want to be that. So I think it's good to always try to take time out for people. So.
Are you thinking long term? What you want to do after college? Are you thinking you want to continue to try to make World Olympic teams? Or are you going to follow the Gable Stevenson path and go WWE? Are you thinking about coaching? Are you going to go in the business world? Like, I guess ultimately, where are you thinking?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd want to achieve everything I can possible in sport, and because I really do still have high aspirations, at the highest level for the sport. I think I need to at least attempt and try because I don't want any regret in my life. I put so much time in it. My dad has invested so much time into me and so much money. I always claim to have the best dad in the world, but I really am so fortunate to have the father I have in my life. I wouldn't be even close where I am. I don't believe in such thing as a self-made man. I think there's always, no matter what position you are, someone's always there to bring you along and help you, even if it's a little bit this or that. So I think I'm going to give everything I can to sport because that's so many people sacrifice their time that they probably could have been spending time eating dinner with their family, or they could have been doing this or something that suits their life a lot better than sitting, taking the time out, help training me, or talking to me. So I think I should do the most responsible thing and give everything I can to the sport, which that's what I want to do anyways, with my own aspirations. So I think that's most important. I have all my time, my whole life to make money. So that'll be afterwards.
Man, I can just feel the gratitude that you have for other people, and I think that's pretty cool, man. I feel like you don't necessarily see that a whole lot. It just seems like you're a pretty humble and loyal guy, and I think especially when people have given you a lot, it's like you want to just fight for them, and I think that's what makes it pretty cool when you're a student athlete. It's like when you feel that time and the energy that your coaches or parents or whatever have been putting into you, it's like you want to give it right back. I think that's pretty awesome.
For sure. I think my dad's crazy. I'm like, what? Why do you do? I always tell people, if I can be half the father my father is for me, I'll be the world's best father. Because he's just done so much, and he's like, I'm like, Dad, just stop. Like, this is way too. Like, I kind of look back, like, I'm like, am I going to put that much effort into my kids? I don't know. Like, this guy's crazy. So I I have 5 other siblings. I'm the baby. So 6 kids. So he had a lot to deal with, and so he put a lot of time in me, and he spread it out evenly. But he was just always put his kids first. He always put his job on the line. Always put for every one of my siblings, and I feel like all my siblings feel the same way. Because of just how much effort our fathers put in and just time and work. And he just was nonstop for, the last 20 years of his life. It's always bam, 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 bam. So my dad commuted when I lived in Indiana. He commuted 2 hours one way, 2 hours back every day for his job. He worked in Chicago. So where we lived in Indiana, 2 ways there, 2 hours there, 2 hours back. He would, when I was training at Purdue as a little kid in middle school, because my dad was always a thinker, always think, what's next best? What's the best coach? Where can I get? What's the next thing? What's always best? He's always a really good critical thinker and just even an abstract thinker, because he was always thinking these new creative ways. And he'd drive 2 hours to Chicago. He'd wake up at 4 every morning, shoot out all his emails, drive to Chicago 2 hours, work his whole day, drive 2 hours back, pick me up around 4-ish or 5-ish, whatever, drive 2 hours down to Purdue. I'd train, whatever, get done around, I don't know, 9, 10, something like that. Probably 9, drive 2 hours back home, whatever. We get home at 12, wake up and repeat the day, do the all again. I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing that for my kids. That's crazy. Yeah. To do that day in, day out.
Tough.
He's just a machine. And to have that father, people are like, oh, don't let your dad live through you. My dad does not live through me. My dad's done nothing but love me and put me in the best position as possible because he wants to see me have success. So, to have a father like that, he always says I don't owe him anything, and that's fine. But I'm going to do everything I can to achieve my goals and all the time and effort he's put into me. That's only the right thing to do. Not only that, it's just like when you're in that position, you have a father that loves you so much and cares about you so much. And I'm very, very fortunate. And he takes time to guide and help me and time to talk to me and help develop me in all areas of life. I'm just so fortunate to be in that position to have a great father. And all I want to do is achieve my goals and maximize myself out and working out and accolades as much as possible.
That's at some point you're gonna have to pay it forward to your kids, and be the example. And I think that's pretty cool, man.
It truly is a team effort too.
For sure.
It's definitely a team effort between, the athlete and the family and the coaches. And, Brian and I, we've coached some pretty high level guys. He's got one of his former high school wrestlers at Iowa right now. I've got a kid at Stanford and a kid at Maryland. And, I think I can speak from personal experience that some of the most successful kids in the country, the ones that, they're getting national rankings and stuff like that, they have a support system within their family, similar to like you, right? Where their parents are willing to go out of their way to make sure that their kid is getting the best training possible, the best partners possible. And it truly is a sacrifice, like I'm getting ready for this off season and we're a few weeks already into it. And I got, tournaments, Western regionals, freestyle and Greco tournaments across the country. We just got back from NHSCA, which is out in Virginia. We've got Fargo coming up, and these tournaments cost money. It's
Yeah.
expensive for these families.
Right.
And, I'm just talking with my kids, cadets and juniors, and even some of the schoolboy age, like 14U families. And it's like, look, I understand that this is financially tough, but what you guys are doing for your kids and supporting them to get to these events and get to train with these individuals and be at these tournaments is huge for them in the long run. And I believe most of them will, but I truly do hope that they all have that same outlook that you do, where they realize like, man, I'm in this position because of what my family has done for me, and I am eternally grateful for that. And it's awesome to hear you say that.
For sure. I think if I was to never All-American, do nothing in my career, I think it's a win. My dad got me in a position where I could go to a lot of colleges, be financially debt-free and all these things. So I think not everyone gets that position. So I think, obviously I want you a lot higher than that. But I think you can put yourself in really, really good positions. All these parents that are making these sacrifices and kids, it's a different ballgame now. It just really is. I'm lucky to catch the the start of it, but like there's so much money out there these days with all these donors, schools, scholarship. I think you bust your butt and you could really make it's an investment now. It truly is an
Yes.
investment. You
Yes.
could triple, quadruple your money, whatever you're dumping in now your kids and stuff. You could financially put your kid very, very far in life. And I think that is absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. Especially a sport like wrestling, when you hear all these crazy deals, like that's in wrestling? These are football numbers, So that's awesome. That's great for us. We're getting to that scene. So and having these people with these investors, these type of investors, these elitists, these people all really loving our sport, which is great for the sport. I think that's really, really awesome. So I think these parents are making, man, I don't know. It's like there's a point where my dad gave his last $20 to people, and that's honest to God truth. And he's always, we're in some positions growing up as kids. Like I'm like, he shouldn't be paying for this. He shouldn't be. My dad would just find a way. He'd never worked 9 to 5. He worked 5 to 10. And that was every single day of his life. Still to this day, he's a machine. But I think looking back, I don't think he regrets any of it. I don't think I'm going to look back and be like, dang, I wish my dad worked a little bit less for me, or I wish it worked a little bit less then. I don't ever look back. I'm like, I'm so glad, I keep chipping away, trying to work hard. I don't think anyone looks back like that,
Right.
I've never heard of it anyways, so I think realizing, you could put your kid in a really, really good financial position and absolutely change your life. So I think if you're on the table, as a parent, it's tough. I get it. Jobs, there's a lot of things in life. Keep chipping away, keep developing your kid, and make the sacrifices, and try to put your kid in the best scenario as possible. So.
I love it.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, you go.
No, you go. Yeah, you go.
I want to talk about heavyweights next year. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're gonna hit the ground running at Wyoming. And when I'm looking at who's coming back next year at heavyweights, and it's funny. I think some of the top guys, right, did not even compete this last season, and that includes you, your former teammate Younger at Iowa State. Tay Gadali, who moved, transferred over from Campbell to Michigan, and Nathan Taylor at Lehigh. All these guys, didn't compete this past season, and they're all going to be jumping back into the heavyweight pool. Obviously, a lot of guys graduated. No more Stevenson, no more Hendrickson, no more Kirkleviet. How do you feel where you square up with these guys, and just what are your goals? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you got high aspirations, but how do you think you match up currently?
I think I match up Depending on guy, I think I match up pretty well. I'd say the most part. I think ultimately I'm just trying to develop wins and losses. As crazy as it sounds, you got to get there. But as crazy as it sounds, really only 3 days of the year matters. As bad as it sounds,
Absolutely.
kind of the truth. You just look at all the guys that popped off or all the upsets. I mean, which is every year, but still, like you get this, some of these smaller schools and they're just taking out some of these top guys. Like, well, where is this all year? It doesn't matter where it was all year. It just matters right now in this moment.
Right.
So I
Absolutely.
think ultimately, wherever the chips fall when I go into NCAAs, they fall. But what matters is that last 3 days. And I think if I can peak at the right time, I think my ceiling is unlimited. What people don't understand, the last 4 years of my career, I haven't trained 1 year straight. Not once. Not
Wow.
1 year straight. I've been injured. I've been injured. I've been injured. Or just in a position where I can train. So I have not trained for a year straight the last 4 years of my career. I haven't. So I think my ceiling's really high. I think once I can finally get in a system where I can train the full season and train and be healthy, Lord willing, I think I have a pretty tall ceiling. So
Awesome.
How do you, I guess, continue to develop, or really just keep your mind just having that self belief, even though, like you said, like you've been out with injury and a lot of chaos that's been happening the last few years. How do you continue to kind of build that self belief and that self talk, despite all these distractions and all this chaos that's happening in your life?
for sure, I think number one, faith is the most important thing to me in my life. I think you know he's everything. He's in control. I think a lot of times we're horses with blinders. We can only see what's ahead of us. We can't see what's around us. We can't see big picture. Ultimately, if I just transferred to Wyoming and I never All American, but I saved this guy's soul, I think it's a win for me. I think in all of eternity, I think that's a win for me. I think that's more important than anything on this planet. So ultimately, I think you just got to look that God has a big picture for you. Keep chipping away in your faith. Like for me, it was a really, really tough time. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? Everyone goes through it. I'm not saying I have this sob story. Everyone goes through, down moments. But I think people always say it's like, oh, it's so easy to lose faith when you're at the top of the mountain. For me, I think it's complete opposite. I think it's so easy to give God gratitude when I'm winning stuff and on top and feel like everything's great. Yeah, praise the Lord, great. But when you're really hurting, when you're really down, you still believe, you still chipping away at your faith. You just, you got all these things like, yeah, it's going to be tough, but I think you just got to put your head down and realize God puts you in seasons. And whatever season I was in, I think I'm finally getting out of. I have a place, I have a home. I'm moving, I'm doing things. So I think sometimes you just get put in bad seasons. You just got to chip away. I think you got to be positive. I think my confidence is built through my faith, but I also think my confidence is built through maybe how I'm wired. But I think I have a lot of confidence. I know I can wrestle at a high level. I know, for me specifically, I realized, wow, I had a lot of success without really training for a full year straight the last 4 years. I've competed and done a lot of good things. And I think, when I get in a good training system and have a full year of training and the next 4 full years of training, I think I can really compete at a high level. I think the overall outlook, I think everyone's a little bit different, beliefs, systems, all these different things. So, and how they're raised. But I think when you're down and out, all you can do is control the controllables. It's so hard to not think like that because you're like, oh, I can't. You start panicking, you start freaking out. It's all right. Calm down. Control what you can right now. I was in a position I didn't have a lot of much training, but I try to take control of the gym, the running, the lifting, physical shape, mental shape. I try to take control of all these things. Watching film, breaking down guys technically. I try to take down everything I can that I ultimately can control and that what's in my wheelhouse at this position right now, so I can be way ahead when I get back into it. Or I can sit down, moan, be lazy, feel bad for myself, crawl up in my bed, don't have a routine, sleeping until 12, whatever. You can do that part, but the thing is, you're not setting yourself up as much as you can. I always say, I'd rather take 1% of survival than zero. Always put yourself in for the race. Never count yourself out. So,
Ryan, that brings me back to Coach Orozco. It rings one of our coaches in college. He's currently a firefighter out in Boise, Idaho, and
that's awesome.
he constantly
We had our coaches leave and take another job, and then their job after Boise State got canceled, they lost their job.
But great men, and one of the things he constantly preached, and it's one thing that I constantly try to pass down to my kids, is control the controllables. Everything else is out of your control and you can't worry about it and you can't sweat it. But if you focus on what's in front of you, what you can control, and what you can change and make a difference doing, you're going to find success. And that's something that we preach at our program consistently. And I love that mindset. It's a winning mindset, and it's like a subtle confidence mindset as well. You have that confidence where you're taking care of everything you can in your control, which is your mindset and your shape and your conditioning and your belief and the training. Everything else that happens after that, like you said, the season's long and it's a grind, and everything, crazy things happen, but you're ready to locked and loaded for those last 3 days of the season. Anything is possible. Anything is possible, and that's exciting to hear.
You saw this last Sensitive Blaze. Anything is
Yes,
possible, anything.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you
I
know?
will say-
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I jumped in front of you already.
Yeah, you've been jumping, dude.
Sorry.
I'm gonna reach through the screen and grab you. Do you know who you're living with next year, or I guess on Monday?
Monday, Joey.
Nice.
Joey.
Nice.
So I do have another tie to Wyoming. It's actually my teammate at Iowa State. He, I think he was like a junior world runner-up champ at Roper. He's actually going to go to the rodeo team at Wyoming. I'm like, dude, why'd you even wrestle? I'm like, dude, he's like done a lot of great things in the rodeo world. I'm like, the truck he drives is way from a competition he won. Like, he's competed in the stockyards where I'm at with PBR in Fort Worth, Dallas. Like, he's like legit as it gets. And I'm like, man, I probably would have just got rodeo. And now he's making that transition. But he's on the same team as me at Iowa State. And he's wrestled 84-97 as well. So really good buddy of mine, next door neighbor in my apartment. So we got along really well. And he actually told me before I left the University of Iowa State, he was like, this was like in January-ish or something like, he's like, hey, I ain't coming back. I'm going to Wyoming rodeo. I was like, okay. I kind of like how I was like, okay. All right. He's like, just let you know, man, whatever you do, that's awesome. That's great for you. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I really thought about that really long and hard because we're really, really good boys. I'm like, interesting, but we'll see. Time will tell on that Wyoming. So here we are. So.
Have you ever thought about getting on a bull, or have you been on a bull before?
Now, from my dad's perspective, he would kill me. I'm a little bit of a gunslinger. I think there's this place they're telling me about that all you need to do is sign a waiver and you're good. You can get on a bull in 20 minutes. So 100%. I like my mindset. Yeah, let's do it. I'm all for it, but I don't know if, that's good for my career after my track history.
Mark Branch, if you're listening, we promise he's just kidding around. Like, he's not getting on a bull.
For sure. I'd never do that. Of course I would, coach. But no, I'd never do that, So I think I'll stick to horses and stuff in my wheelhouse that I've done a little bit easier than riding a bull. So would I love to? My mind, oh my goodness, I want to so badly. I just want to say, cross that off my bucket list. I think after my career, there's no shadow of a doubt I'm going to get on a bull.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't know why I have like in my brain that Tim McGraw song where it's like, I want to climb the Rocky Mountains and I want to ride a full day Fu Manchu, like just to do it for the song. And I feel like I've had chances to, but it's like, dude, I don't want to get hurt. Like, I don't want to get gored, or I don't want to have to miss time off the mat. Like that's primary number one. But it's like what you said. It's like you don't want to have any regrets either. So maybe that's something that can wait. It can wait until after you're done competing. So it doesn't get in the way.
For right now, I think I'll just stick to the mechanical until I'm done competing. So we'll go with that. So
even the mechanical will jack you up. Like it'll, you got to really like pinch with your thighs and stuff.
Oh, for sure. Those suck. I remember walking into this one place in Dallas and they had a mechanical bull and they just thought they're like, oh, you look like a rider. I was like, sure. And they cranked it up. So I fell off in like 20 seconds. I was like, what the heck, dude? Like everyone else, guys my size were fine. He's like, oh, you look like a rider. I was like, sure. Of course I had to say something smart. And I paid for it, Probably quite a few good looking ladies, but it is what it is,
That's awesome.
Well, Christian, we've been going for an hour, man. Before we wrap up, just want to say thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been a blast. Dude, you should get into the podcasting game. You can talk, man. Like you're good at telling stories and stuff. You ever thought about doing something like that?
I think my dad's probably the biggest talker. If you're trying to get something done, don't talk to him. He'll talk to you for 6 hours. He'll earlock you. And I have the same traits. I like to earlock people. So, I really would. If I could promote myself and create a really big podcast, I'd be all for it, for sure. Maybe I should get into sales. Maybe I should quit finance, get into sales.
They kind of go in together.
There's got to be somebody in Wyoming that could help you edit and all that stuff. But any jabroni can just buy a microphone, a headset, and just do it. So I mean,
right. I think you inspired me. Maybe I will.
There you go. What would you call it?
Ooh,
caroling with Christian? No, it sounds kind of Christmas themed. You could do it, but I don't know.
I don't know. That was pretty good.
That was great. That was great,
sure.
Brian.
Cowboy rip off top of the head. You say Cowboy Christian?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We'll see.
There we go.
I ultimately, I want to appreciate you guys. This is also a way to market myself and get myself out there, and I appreciate you guys taking me on and allowing me to be on here as well. So.
Well, we would love to have you back on in the future, and maybe we get you and Novak on together.
For sure.
Sweet. And talk to you guys and maybe catch up in a few months after you guys have been training together and get some more stories rolling and some insight into how the team's looking into this upcoming year. That'd be really exciting. I'm going to be out at US Open. So if you are out there this in a couple weeks, hit me up. Let's we can get a quick interview, Matt side or something like that, and we'll have some fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be
for sure. Definitely.